All right. Thank you for that reminder, whoever gave that up. So we're going to go through the Living Life Defender, and we're going to talk about the CMC Rider, and we're going to talk about the LIBR, the Lifetime Income Benefit Rider. The CMC Rider is what makes this so unique and so powerful, and I'm going to go through at least 4 different examples of how we can utilize that CMC Rider. In other words, 4 different case studies as to the different types of clients that we can use this on. And I'm going to get in there and show it to you. So the 4 different types we can use this for are people that are broke. Okay. I can use this especially for people that are broke. I can use this for people that especially are rich. So if they're really rich, this is a perfect rider for them. If they're really broke, this is a perfect rider for them. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that. This is also a great tool, CMC Rider, for people for juvenile policies. As a matter of fact, I just sent out an illustration for a 0-year-old. They're actually not even born yet. So I told them 2 weeks after, we can go ahead and put a policy in place. So they're ready, chomping at the bit. I put together a nice little illustration for grandma who's going to buy this policy for him. I'm going to decorate it nicely. I come up with some materials to package it in. It's going to be presented at the baby shower, right? A baby shower. What a great gift at a baby shower. A Defender IUL? Are you kidding me? So that's the 3rd example we'll do. And the 4th example I'm going to show you is for business owners and how business owners can take advantage of this and why they would want this, okay? Lots of different demographics out there. Everybody can use it. Alrighty. Let's see here. Let me share my screen. All right, here we go. Technical. So now this is where I lose visibility. So Joe, it's all up to you. Oh, whoops. Okay. All right, let's try looking at Chrome. Thank you. All right. Well, I got Joe over here in the corner. All right. So I have prepared, like I said, a few policies or a few illustrations that we're going to look at. So first, let's look at Broke Bob. Okay. That is a great example that I'm going to show you and why we would want to. Let me turn on the chat here so I can see that. I'm dialed in with a different phone. All right. So the example that I'm using here, and everybody is, let me go back to the benefit rider. Let's say that Broke Bob wants $1 million policy. All right. Everybody wants $1 million policy. I'm going to use $1 million just because it's going to make life a little easier in terms of comparing, right? So Broke Bob, he's a typical 40, it defaults to the 45-year-old. And if you look at this, if we go to the quick view on $1 million policy, you can see, whoops, let me go back here. I was putting this together. If I just do the ding, 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 the target premium. Okay. All right. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at the target premium for $1 million policy on a 45-year-old healthy male standard, right? And you can see that if he's putting, if he's doing $1 million death benefit, and the premium, the monthly premium for him is going to be $1,400 a month, right? $1,400 a month for $1 million, right? And I'm just going to have him funding it for 20 years. So 20 years funding, and I'm just using the target premium. And you can ask this later, but basically, whenever if somebody's wanting more policy, I will do increasing type B for some people, but I will stop doing it after we funded it, after we stop funding it. So if we're only funding for 20 years, I'm going to give them option B for 20, 21 years, and then go back to option A. But my problem here with Broke Bob is that he cannot afford $1,400, right? Did everybody see this okay? I'm getting no feedback. Everybody's okay on this?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, $1,400. He can't afford that. How can we give him $1 million of coverage? And there's multiple ways we could do this, but we're talking about the CMC. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to drop this down to 250,000. Whoops, not 250 million. Hello. $250,000 IUL, but I'm going to go over to riders and I'm going to add a combo multi-choice, add insured. And who am I going to add? I'm going to add himself, primary insured. And the primary insured, I'm going to add for 750,000. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Broke Bob. There we go. Broke Bob is wanting $1 million because he's got children, and his children are like 2 and 3 years old. And he's worried about he's worried about them if something happens to him in the next 20 years. So his insurable need for the next 20 years is different than his insurable need, say, in 30 or 40 years, right? I'm going to add this on there. So primary insured, 20 years. Now, what I've done here is I've given him $1 million worth of coverage, but 750 of it is from the CMC Rider. Basically, it's a CMC term rider for 20 years because he was really concerned about what happens if his children. Now, once his children are in college and they're gone, his concerns are not what happens to the children. His concerns now are going to kind of shift into what happens to him, right? So, for example, the living benefits. But if I do a quick view on this, you can see now that the target premium for this $1 million policy is no longer $1,400. It's now $507. That's powerful. To be able to give somebody, a 45-year-old, $1 million policy for $507 instead of $1,400 is going to make a lot of people smile. All right. Now, if you'll notice, though, what happens? What happens after 20 years? That death benefit is going to drop. Now, it doesn't drop to 250, which is what the IUL was. The IUL, remember, I had it in growth mode for 20 years. So it's at least come up to 354. And you can see that when Broke Bob, he's broke, but he's healthy. He's going to live into his 90s. And now he's got $500,000 back again by the time he passes at 90. But we don't have to leave it at that. He may be broke, but he's not completely destitute. So 500 is actually less than what he can afford. He could give us more than that. What if we specify, instead of 1,400, let's specify maybe $850? I don't know. Money in, money out, right? So if he could, it's not 1,400, so he's saving money. But if he could at least put more money into this policy, look what's going to happen. After 20 years, and he's been putting 10,200 in, now his policy is not at 300, it's 509. So it goes from the $1 million, it grows to 1.2, and then after that CMC term rider drops off, it goes back down to 509 now. And he doesn't have to fund it anymore. He can if he wants to, but you can see by the time he's back up to 90, actually even in his 80s, this policy is over $1 million again. So if his concerns are what happens during the when the children are young, this is a perfect design for him. If his concern is also what happens when I get old, or maybe what happens, how am I going to leave something behind, as a legacy, this solves that problem as well. The only problem it doesn't solve is if he wants $1 million, maybe 10 years after the kids have moved out. Well, it's not solving that problem, but that's not what he told me his problem was. He says he's really concerned while they're young. But if we also look at the ABR values, the living benefits, it solves that problem too. Because when he gets older, he's got some good numbers that he can pull out of this death benefit as part of his living benefits. Stage 2, stage 3, stage 4 cancer when he's 85, that's $1 million payout. Alzheimer's, $1 million payout. And he's got $10,000 and $20,000 a month for chronic illness, depending on the age, right? Again, if he funds it more aggressively, maybe he gets a bonus, maybe he gets a job, maybe he's not so broke in 5 years. He could actually fund this more, right? But I just wanted to demonstrate that this policy doesn't have to, $1 million policy does not have to be 400, I'm sorry, $1,400. It could be as little as $500. And if he could fund it a little bit better, then he'll have even more down the road. All right. Any questions on that so far? Does anybody have any broke bobs in their in their client list that they can go back to? The CMC Rider is great for that. All right, let's go back now and take a look at a different scenario. No, I don't need to save that. Let's look at, let's see here, 20 diamonds. No, let's come back to 20. 20 diamonds is our rich one. I'm going to come back to the rich one. Let's look at Big Boss. I like Big Boss. All right, Big Boss is a business owner. All right, and CMC. If you notice, when you first come into the illustration, it has this nice little wheel here, and you could actually just point and click, and it starts to design things for you. For example, if you click Enable Advanced Market, you could actually pre-design this as a key person policy or an executive bonus policy or buy sell. But we're going to do CMC. So I'm clicking on the CMC, and there's some options over here. I'd like to add additional coverage for my children using children's term. No, we're doing the children's term rider. That's a different rider. But the CMC rider is additional coverage using that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the flexibility of the CMC rider. Big Boss, we're going to give him $1 million policy. And he's still the same 45-year-old, right? And the 45-year-old, you can see here, has a target premium of $16,000, but a maximum non-MEC of $75,000 a year. What does that mean? That means he could put up to $75,000 without creating a modified endowment out of this policy, which would change the taxable nature of it. That's not the scope of what I want to talk about, but my point is, when he starts adding additional insureds on here, it's going to change that as well. So if his business wants to fund this more aggressively for whatever reason, then he's going to have a lot more flexibility. So you'll notice that the maximum non-MEC is $75,000. And let's see here. Let's see how I'm funding it. Do I have? All right, it's at a level death benefit at this point. So I'm going to just go ahead and, let me go back up here so I can show you. If I'm going to turn this into a CMC, go ahead. Somebody has a question?
Hey, Dave, Amy has a question for your poor broken Bob case. How many years?
Bob? Okay.
Yeah, how many years did you put?
How many years of term?
Yeah.
It was 20-year. Now, you could have done a 30-year term if he's young enough, but I just did a 20-year term because his consideration was the children, and they're going to be gone in 20 years. And if I went with a 30-year, it's going to add more cost of insurance, and then that $850 would not go as far in terms of building the IUL. So what I really wanted to do is give him the temporary increase using that 20-year term as a CMC rider, but I wanted to fund the IUL as much as possible so that it will grow back up after that term is gone. So if I added a 30-year term, yeah, it's going to give them more coverage for that $750,000, but it's also going to eat into the indexed account because of the cost of insurance being increased like that. Remember, when we open up a policy, two circles, two lines, right? We open a policy, we're opening up two accounts. One is the benefit base, and the other one is the cash account, the Bank of Bob. So I wanted the Bank of Bob to grow as much as possible to compensate for the fact that IUL face value only started off at $250,000. And by leaving it as a 20-year term, that gives us a little bit more money going into the index account to grow that IUL back up to 500 and even up over $1 million before he kicks it. All right. So yeah, it was only a 20-year term that I designed before. Now back to big. Does that answer your question? Does that work?
Okay. I think so.
Okay. So back to Big Boss. He's got $1 million policy. We're going to click this. We want to add additional coverage using the combo multi-choice rider. And you could even put 1 through 5, because you could have up to 5 additional insureds. I'm just going to make 3, all right, just to demonstrate. And now what happens when I go to riders? It's already put in 3 different multi-choice riders. Now I have to go in and edit them because they're all spouses. Unless he lives in Utah, that's not going to work, right? So we have to go and edit these, or I could just add them, manually to begin with. And I like to do things more manually. So again, checking the death benefit, he's got $1 million in coverage. And I'm just going to clear all because I don't need 3 spouses. Holy cow, I don't need 3 spouses. All right, let's add an insured. And instead of spouse, let's add a business partner. And the first business partner is going to be Little Boss. And Little Boss is also going to have $1 million. And we can make it for 20 or 30 years. It just depends on the nature of the relationship, right? I'll make this for 20 years. Okay, boom. So Little Boss also has $1 million. Now, how do we get away with this? Big Boss has an insurable need on his key business partners. If something happens to Little Boss, it's going to cost his company money. So he can demonstrate a sincere insurable need. And that is what we can do with this combo multi-choice rider in a business environment. Now, check with your CPA, but it's also possible that, and very likely that, if this policy is designed for the exclusive, if it's designed for the business itself, they might be able to save on the premiums. In other words, save taxes on the premiums you're paying, assuming it's not split, a split scenario. All right, so again, moving on. Let's add another insured. This one's going to be, let's see, who's this going to be? Bob. Let's do Bobby. No, Joe. Let's do Joe. Okay, Joe, janitor. Joe, janitor. He's actually the janitor, but really, in real life, it's Big Boss's cousin. And Big Boss vowed to his sister that he would take care of Joe and he would give him a job at the company. So he went ahead and made him the janitor, and he makes a pretty good salary as a janitor. And in this situation, we're also going to recognize that there is an insurable need to replace that janitor, because man, oh man, he does such a good job. It's going to cost us $1 million to replace him. Anyway, I'm being silly, but you can see that we're adding another business partner or another entity that is a key person, or whatever the case may be, that makes that an insurable need or insurable person that the business is needing, right? Let's add one more. We can call it other, not extended family. Maybe other is going to be a key man. Maybe it's a restaurant, and this is Chef Louis. There we go. And Chef is going to get a 20-year, and Louis is worth another $1 million. Everybody's 45 years old. Let's make it Louisa. There we go. Louisa, 45-year-old female, and she is an amazing chef. Okay, now we have up to $3 million of CMC Rider coverage, and you can see that there's going to be limits on this. The limits are basically that you can only have up to 5 CMC riders on here. And the other limit is you can only have up to 3 times the original IUL. So if I tried, for example, to make Louisa a $2 million policy, it's probably going to give me an error message. Yep, there it is. Total coverage, got the little red X. This is a great thing about our illustration software. You can't break it. And if you make a mistake, it will tell you you made a mistake. And all I have to do is touch that. And it says sum of combo multi-choice cannot exceed 3 times the total face value of the base IUL. All right, boom. That makes sense so far. So we'll cut that back to $1 million, and now we've got exactly what we need. So we've got a base policy on Bob, Big Boss of $1 million, and now we have these 3 different people that are added in here because there's insurable need for them. And look at this. The target premium has been going up. Everything's going up because of this. Okay. That makes sense. Any questions so far on that? All right. Very good. Now, if I go over here to death benefit and funding, notice that the guideline level is only 22,000. What if I increase this for 20 years? Now suddenly the guideline level is 61,000. Again, that's another little trick that we can use to put as much money as we can into these policies. So we are solving for, let's see, go back here and solve for, again, it was target premium. Now the target premium for all 4 of these policies is $2,094. Not bad. Not bad for $4 million worth of insurance on for the key people of a business. All right. Okay. And if I were to do one more step and add this and change that from target to guideline, now it's allowing us to put that entire 61,000 in there. And look at this. I mean, imagine if you can capitalize this IUL by funding it more aggressively and have all this kind of cash available to the business to draw from. Within 20 years, this thing has grown to $1.8 million cash value on Big Boss's IUL. So lots of different ways that you can utilize this. So far, so good? Okay. Any questions on using this for a business? All right, I'll keep rolling. Close this out. Let's go to our case list. Case by folder. Come on. There we go. Go to my training folder. And let's look at baby Carlos. So this is great for a baby. Now, baby Carlos is I mentioned him earlier. He's a real baby that's going to be born in about a month. So we have to wait until 2 weeks after he's born before we can actually put the application in. But I went ahead and just designed an illustration for grandma who's going to present this at the baby shower, literally this Sunday. So client information, we're talking about a 0-year-old child. And what she wanted to do is give me $10,000, not me, but pay $10,000 premium for 4 years. And actually, she's not sure how long she'll pay it for, but she's going to start off with an annual premium of $10,000 for her grandson. All right. And what I'm showing her is that if she does it for 4 years, at least 4 years, then she'll have $100,000 in here by the time he hits college. Now, obviously, that's enough for community college, especially in 20 years. But if she funds it more, she'll get more. But right now, she's just looking at putting a small amount in and then turning it over to the parents down the road. All right. So that illustration, even with just 4 years worth of $10,000 a year, there's $100,000. And if he's a smart kid and he gets a full ride scholarship, and she just lets this thing ride, by the time he's in his 50s, there's $1 million in this account, and we only funded it for 4 years. Again, the power of our Defender. $1 million policy with all this protection. Look at the ABRs again. We look at the accelerated benefit riders, in other words, the living benefits, only funding this child for 4 years at a miserable $10,000 a year. We have maxed out these living benefits by the time they'll probably need it, in his 50s, 60s, 70s, or 80s. Very, very powerful product. But I'm here to demonstrate this CMC Rider. So I'm going to go back and change this up a little bit. I'm going to go back to our $1 million policy. let's say that Carlos gets, oh, and here's something else I did, by the way. I wanted him to have the maximum cash value for that $10,000. So instead of saying $1 million, I said, give me a policy, give me an illustration that gives you the minimum death benefit with a maximum cash value. And what it gave me was $538,923. And that allowed us to have a $10,000 guideline level, basically, that we can put in there and it's not going to mech out. Okay. Let's go back to the $1 million policy. $1 million for Carlos, stepping up. I'm going to change this back to target premium. And let's do it for 20 years. What a lot of people will do. We're going to fund baby Carlos, $1 million policy, 20 years, target premium. What does that look like? That is not the right. Okay, I think I may have added. Nope, there's no rider. How do we have a 3,000? Oh, it's an annual premium. Duh. Okay, I looked at that $3,000. I'm like, holy cow, that's a big monthly premium. I'm going to go back to monthly here, and now you can see it's $251. Okay, so if Grandma can put $251 into a policy, that's $1 million policy, and we're only using target premium, so that's not really enough if we're wanting to use this for funding college or funding maybe a home, buying his first home down the road, or maybe starting a new business, or all the different things that we can do with this. So I'm going to go back up here to the funding, and instead of target premium, I'm going to give it the guideline level. So now if you notice down here in our little corner, guideline level is about twice as much as target premium, right? $6,000 a year, which is about a little over $500 a month. And if we do that, we're up to $198,000 in 20 years, $200,000 in 20 years. All right, well, we're getting closer. But really, Grandma has money. This Grandma has money. And she could do more. She could do a lot more than $6,000 a year. All right, so how are we going to do that? Let's go back to our CMC Rider. Notice that the guideline level is 6,000 and the non-mech is 32. But let's add Grandma, grandparent. She's going to add herself as an insured. She could use one of her kids, but I'm just going to put Granny Big Bucks. And you're going to come across them. People will spend way more money on their grandchildren than they do their own kids. And Granny Big Bucks is now 65. And because she's 65, we can only do a 20-year term. And let's give Granny $1 million coverage as well. How much could we give her? If the child is at 1 million, we could actually give Grandma a $3 million term CMC Rider, right? I'm just going to do $1 million. Again, remember the guideline level was 6,000 before. Wow. Now the guideline level is not 6,000, it's 111,000. And look at that maximum non-mech, $373,000 a year. Did I hear gasps? Were there people gasping in the audience? I think the pressure in the room just went down because everybody sucked in all the air so fast. Yeah, that's pretty powerful. So if we go back to design, and we've got this on guideline, right? So we're paying the guideline. That's a lot of money. Guideline in this case is $111,000 a year. Believe it or not, there are people out there with a lot of money and will put that kind of money into their grandchild. And look what happens when that happens when you design it that way. In 20 years, when they're ready to go to college, yeah, it's no longer the 10,000 for 4 years, setting them up for community college. Now we're talking about 3.6 million, 3.8 million in this account by the time by the time Carlos goes to college. And that'll pay for whatever school you want in this country. So the numbers get really big. And even if you thought, well, gosh, who in the world is going to do that? Even if they just want to put, say, $50,000 a year in, a miserable 50,000. Oops. So let's change this to annual, and let's make this 50. And we're doing it for 20 years. For somebody that's already a millionaire, 50,000 a year for a child is not a big deal for them, especially for a grandchild. And you're still well over $1 million, 1.3, 1.4 by the time they're in school. All right. Powerful. And you couldn't do that unless you added the CMC Rider. Not possible. Okay. We go into one more example. Any questions on baby Carlos with $1 million policy and a $1 million grandma? And you know what grandparents love? Just jump in if you got a question. Grandparents love to control the policy, right? They may not trust they may not trust their own child or that spouse with this much cash. So they can actually own the policy themselves in this situation. And then actually that was exactly what I did. I personally, the first policy I took out was on my 2-year-old grandson. And I still own it. I still fund it. And it's for exactly this purpose. I'm going to build this thing so that his life he'll never want, and he'll always be protected. He wasn't 2 weeks, he was 2 months. Go ahead.
I have a question. Now, is grandma also insured on this policy?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's exactly right. I used grandma as the insured for the CMC Rider itself.
So obviously the insurance is going to be more because she's older, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so
yeah, that's a good question. Let me go back and show you what the target premium would be like by adding her on. Remember, it's $250 a month for just the child. But now, where am I? If I go to target, and let's do monthly. Yeah, obviously $1 million on a 65-year-old, even a healthy one, is going to be a little bit more than the baby. But when you do that, the target premium is now not $250 a month, but $1,350 a month. So it added, about $1,100 for the 65-year-old to have $1 million policy.
okay.
Now, we don't want to fund it minimally because, I can tell when a policy is not being funded properly. I shouldn't say properly. It just depends on the situation. But in this case, we want to really fund it aggressively so that the baby Carlos, is going to have a good fund, a lot of money for college or for buying a house or whatever. And when I see a lot of zeros in the first 2, 3, 4 years, I'd like to see more funding going on. So in this case, especially since there's an expensive term rider, and I say expensive, relatively speaking, 65-year-old, since there's a term rider on there, we really should be funding this more aggressively if we're wanting to use this for cash. So instead of target, go ahead.
Well, okay. So what happens when, and I'm sorry, I'm new. So
it's okay.
What happens when grandma passes away? Does she get paid out and the policy stays intact, or does what actually happens there, or does it terminate?
So yeah, so here's what I'm going to do, right? And I'm grandpa. I'm grandpa big bucks, right? So obviously the child is going to live longer than I will. He's 6 years old. I'm 62. I know. You can't possibly imagine that I'm 62 years old. I look so much younger, but it's true. So what I will end up doing, I'll do one of several things. I will have ownership of my policy to be in my living trust. And that is one way that I can still continue to control the asset from beyond the grave. A second option would be to pass ownership to one of the parents at such time that I would trust them with this much money. The third option would be to pass ownership to the actual child himself, to Carlos in this case, once he's over 18 years old. So it just depends on what the relationship is and the level of responsibility is with the actual parents in this situation, or later for the actual child.
But if they
But-
don't have a trust and something happens to grandma, does the policy terminate or what happens? If they
Well,
didn't-
okay, so let's think about that for a second. And I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Okay. All right. So, hello, turn on the screen. Ownership. This is a little bit off topic, but I'm glad you asked because this is really important for people to understand. If grandma owns the policy and the child is whatever, it doesn't matter if he is 10 years old or 30 years old. If grandma owns the policy as an individual and then grandma passes away, what's going to happen to that? If it depends on what state you live in, frankly, and you really need to consult a estate planning attorney for the specific results in whatever state you live in. Texas is very different from California when it comes to probate. It's a lot easier in dealing with probate. But obviously, if grandma owns this policy as an individual and then she passes away, that policy is going to go into probate if it's not in a living trust. How ridiculous the probate is just depends on where you live. California, it's ridiculous. Texas, not so much. I think with just a living will, the ownership of that policy could be passed on to, somebody else, like the actual parent, right? Or if they're old enough, to the actual insured, the grandchild. So it just depends. If you don't have it in a living trust, it's going to go through probate just like any other asset of significance.
But
right?
there's still a child. So I guess my question is does the policy terminate, or like in the situation of a house, if there's a joint ownership, it reverts to the other person on the policy. So would the policy just go over to the grandchild, or?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's four entities with this policy that I'm gonna talk about. There's the insured, there's the owner, there's the beneficiary, and there's the payor. These could all be different people. Typically it's two. But if grandma owns it and grandma's funding it and Carlos is the insured, then who's the beneficiary? Well, in my case, I'm the beneficiary on my grandson because, again, it's all about control. And if I receive the funds, then I can turn around and take care of whatever. I mean, God forbid that happens, and I'm in a situation where my grandchild passes before I do. But if it's a beneficiary situation, then the funds, the death benefit goes to whoever the beneficiary actually is. And grandma could own the policy, insuring the grandchild, and actually make the parents the beneficiary, or make the living trust the beneficiary, right? All of these things are possible. So, but you're absolutely right. If grandma owns it and the child, it does. Again, I don't think it matters if the insured is still a child or they're already an adult. The ownership, if it's only grandma, it's going to go through a living trust or it's going to go through probate, one or the other.
Okay.
But again, I'm not an estate planning attorney, and you should confirm these things with whatever state that you live in: Texas, California, Florida, Massachusetts, etc. Does that make sense?
Where I was confused is because grandma was insured and the child was insured. So I'm trying to figure out.
Thank you. All right, so these are two different, even though it's combined into one CMC policy. So what would happen is ownership of the IUL would go on to go through probate or go through living trust. The benefit, the death benefit of grandma's term policy, that CMC policy, will be paid out to whoever her beneficiary is. So when you set up one of these policies, I apologize, I'm confused on your question. When you set up one of these CMC policies, you're going to answer some of these questions twice, including the beneficiary. So it's going to ask you in the application process, who is the beneficiary for your IUL, and then who is the beneficiary for the CMC rider, the term rider. So it could be obviously different people. So grandma might be the beneficiary for the insured, the grandchild, but if grandma kicks it, her beneficiary might just be the parents, or it could be her living trust.
So if I understand correctly, then if something happens to grandma, then the grandchild can continue on with his policy because it is a separate, in a sense, a separate policy. Right. And he can continue funding it and blah, 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 right?
Well, whoever owns it can continue funding it. So if the child is an adult and maybe in her living trust, it states that ownership of that policy will go back to the child. Then he's got ownership. He can fund it. He can do whatever he wants with it. But you're absolutely right. On the term part, the CMC term, there's a beneficiary stated on that for grandma, and if she goes home, whenever she goes home, that death benefit for her will go to whoever she designated.
Got it. Thank you.
Somebody else asked, does grandma need to be a U.S. citizen? No. There's a lot of people, especially in this group, there's a lot of people that are green card hold a green card, permanent resident aliens, and they have policies. I know a lot of people that are not citizens and own a policy. So when you own the policy, you have all the rights and you have all the rights of anybody that owns a policy. So that part doesn't matter. If you want to get into foreign nationals and how that works with selling a policy to foreign national, that's another advanced topic, another advanced market. We could talk about that another time. But foreign nationals can own a policy. They can be insured. And in this case, I'm just assuming grandma has been living here for a long time, and either she's a citizen or she is a permanent resident with a permanent resident alien card. So yeah, no problem. All right. How many years? Okay, somebody got that already. All right. Let's go to one more example. I'm going to share my screen. And now we're going to open up a new one. Let's go to cases. And in case, let's look at, okay, we're going to look at Diana Diamonds. She's the rich one. All right, whoops. Here we go. Okay, this is why the CMC Rider is perfect for rich people, not just broke people, not just business owners, not just for children, but also the filthy, stinking rich, right? You've often heard of this. I think you may have heard of this. Our IUL, our Defender IUL is also considered like a rich man's Roth, right? And when people make too much money, they're not able to contribute to the front door of a Roth IRA. Okay, so this is another way to solve that problem. But let me confirm I don't. Yeah, there's nothing here. So Diana Diamonds, 20 diamond earner. She has $1 million policy. Again, we're comparing apples to apples all the way across. So in this case, again, maximum non-MEC 72,000, target premium 14,000. Okay, so if we're going to fund this with a guideline premium, that is only $52,000 a year on this particular individual. So that's going to be $52,000 a year, $4,400 a month. Right? She's making 20 diamonds. It's not a problem, but she wants to do more. Oh, let me do one more thing here. I'm going to take off the income for now. We're going to talk about income on this one as well. Kill the income so we can just talk about CMC. So let me go to the riders. We're going to add a CMC rider. And this is, again, target is 14, guideline level 52,000, non-MEC 72,000. Let's add her hubby, spouse, Dougie Diamonds. There we go. And he's a little bit older. Let's make him 51. And we're going to give him a $1 million policy. All right, so far so good. $1 million for the spouse. suddenly, instead of 52,000, the guideline just jumped up to 147,000. The target just jumped up to 21,000, and the maximum non-MEC just jumped up to 311,000. So now you can see that if we're funding this thing, go back to the death benefit, we're funding it with guideline level, that amount now is 147,000 a year. Right? $147,000 a year for 10 years is giving us a couple $1 million by the time we're hitting 60. Why is that important? Because we want to create, we're going to use this particular one for an income, lifetime income. All right. Obviously, we could add more people if we wanted to, or Dougie could have more. Let's say Dougie needs to actually be insured more. Let's give him 2 million, because we could do up to 3 million. Remember? So now what happened? Holy cow! Guideline level 241,000 a year, maximum non-MEC 550. Now we can play with some numbers. All right, so the diamond girl, she's making 20 diamonds. Remember, she's making a couple $1 million a year, so she could probably easily fund this with $241,000. And if she did easily fund this with $241,000, even for just 10 years, we've got, at the end of that 10 years, $3 million cash value in this thing. Okay. Now, again, this is a larger scale than what most of us are used to dealing with, but there are people out there that could totally fund a policy with this much money. Okay. I'm going to go back actually and dial it down a little bit. I'm going to just put in 200,000. So instead of guideline, I'm going to specify an annual amount of 200. Boom. For 10 years. All right, so 200 for 10 years. At the end of that 10 years, we're at 2.5 million. By the time she's 60, it's to 3.3, almost 3.4 million. And what are we going to do with that information? But that's pretty powerful right there, right? I mean, $1 million policy that we can shovel $250,000 a year into is huge. And we can only do that because of the CMC Rider. Let's get some income going. Now we're going to transition to how powerful these numbers are when we add in a lifetime income rider. Now, when you're doing income, and this is distribution information, right? There are, whoops, didn't mean to click on the hyperlink. There are several different ways to take income. You can take lifetime income benefit rider, or you can just solve for income, or you can specify an income amount. I'm going to start off with lifetime income benefit rider. And you notice that it defaults to 16 years out. And why is that? Because the minimum age that you can turn on the lifetime income benefit rider is 60 years old. So what does that mean? At the age of 60, we've turned on this rider that's going to give her lifetime income, even if she lives to 120. It's going to give her lifetime income, even if the policy asset goes down to zero. If we burn this thing all the way down to a cash value or a surrender value to zero, one of the beautiful features of the LIBR is that the policy will never lapse, ever. The death benefit might go down to a nominal amount, just enough to bury her, but the policy will never lapse when you activate the lifetime income benefit rider. Is there a cost for the lifetime income benefit rider? Not until she turns it on. So if she never uses it, there's never a fee. If she does turn it on, at that point, there is a small fee that is netted into the numbers that we're about to look at. Let's look at distribution on an annual basis. Okay, so let's look at this. How much do you think she's going to get by funding it for 10 years for $200,000 a year? And then at the age of 60, we're going to start taking out income. $206,000, almost $207,000 a year until she goes home, even if she lives to the age of 120. even if the value, the surrender value, goes down to zero. And you can see that the surrender value, it stays pretty healthy. I mean, that's a fair amount of money. All right. The death benefit did start to go down. So you can see that when we activated at the age of 60, the lifetime income benefit, it went from 4.2 down to 4.1, and then down to 4, down to 3.9. So it did drop a bit. It dropped just about $100,000. But wait, there's more. Let's go back and play around with this lifetime income benefit rider. What was it before? Let's go out to let's do 25 years out. So I can say, okay, 206,000. I'm using the cheat sheet down here. I just went out 25 years to do a snapshot of what the values are, and the income is at 206. So if I have some things to play with, I can go, well, LIBR face amount reduction, it's defaults to that. You don't have to. You could turn that off. And if you turn that off, let me go actually to year 21. So you can see that the value, actually, oh no, it was at 16, wasn't it? There we go. 16 years is when this started. So the value, the net death benefit is 4.182. Can you see that? If I turn that off so that there's not a reduction, now the death benefit is going to stay at 4.1. All right, let's go to the quick view. And it may have timed out. Let me go back over here and use the other option, increasing payout option. It's going to change on me. Okay, that part changed. So there's another option. I'll come back to the drop in death benefit. There's another option that you can have a increasing payout option, And that's almost like we're going to start off at a lower amount and then give her a cost of living increase raise every year. So you can see instead of 200, it starts off at 139 and starts growing, 143, 148. It's back up to 200 by the time she's 71. By the time that she's 85, it's up over 300. And then it kind of caps out at 313 because our surrender value got down too small so that we weren't able to add. So it increases when you use that option. So again, different ways to design these things depending on what the needs are of the client. Now, maybe it's not affecting it because there's so much cash value in here. When you have smaller values where the surrender value is smaller, the death benefit smaller, I've seen pretty significant drops when we use that button there to go to reduce the face amount. In this case, I guess when you're max funding it like this, I'm gonna have to go back and find out why, and I will send out. I'll upload my answer into GroupMe when I find out, because I'm not sure why at what point it no longer does that reduction. So this part seems to be, not making a difference. Okay, but with the lifetime income, we've got the 206,000 forever. Now you might say, but Dave, she doesn't need income until she's 120 years old. She's pretty sure mid-90s is about what her parents and her grandparents lived to. Why do we need to have a fee and activate all that and that type of thing? And the answer is it'll never lapse. Once you turn on the lifetime income benefit rider, it will never lapse, and it's guaranteed to fund for the rest of her life. But let's go ahead and accommodate your little objection. Solve for income. And I'm going to solve for income from age 60 to age 90. Oops, not 90, but age 90. Here we go. Now, something's about to happen here. And the first thing that happens is the amount of the distribution is 211,000. It's a little bit more than what we saw before. But what I want to point out to you is that the default loan type for the lifetime income benefit rider is standard loan. When you go back to doing it more manual and solve for income like this, you can change this to a different loan type. So I'm going to change this to participating declared loan. We have so many types. Which one are you going to use in 20 years? Who knows? It depends on where the rates are. And we can make that call at the time that we actually start the distribution. That's one of the important reasons that you need to be having your annual reviews with your clients. But right now, participating gives us a pretty good return. So now what's going to happen? If I go down to the quick view, look at that. Now it's up to 269,000. 269,000 from the age of 60 to the age of 90. And we still have a healthy death benefit of 1.2 million at the age of 90. So it just depends. The advantage of not doing the lifetime income rider is that you can design this to have higher income, right? Maybe they don't need the income until the age of 72. Maybe they don't need the income until their 90s. Maybe they're pretty convinced that they only need it until they're 72, right? Because then they're going to have to start taking out their RMDs from their deferred accounts. Whatever the reason is, you can design this however you want to. But again, the big advantage of lifetime income benefit rider, even if let's start this instead of at 60, let's go to 65, 21 years. The big advantage of having the lifetime income benefit rider is that it will never lapse. Look at that. If we just waited 5 years, now it's up to 299,000 until the age of 120. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a powerful tool. And this is what makes our product a blue ocean product. Blue ocean. Nobody else has this. Nobody else has this. All righty. Somebody had to leave. Your video is turned off. Can everybody see the video okay? When was I sharing the screen all right that whole time?
You turned off the video probably accidentally, or
But were you able to see the illustration that I was showing for the?
Yeah. Still.
Okay, perfect.
See the
I
illustration.
don't care if you see me, but as long as you can see the illustration, right? That's the beautiful part. Okay, good. That is a powerful product. The CMC Rider, especially combined with the lifetime income benefit rider, is what creates a product that nobody else out there has. You can go, and this is a great recruiting tool. I use that demonstration as a recruiting tool when I'm trying to bring in other licensed agents from other companies, because they don't have this. They just don't have this, right? So any other questions or comments or anything that we can talk about within the scope of the CMC Rider or that lifetime income benefit rider? Was that useful? All right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for the yes. Okay. Well, this was recorded. Wendy will go ahead and make this available. And I'm sure it's going to be replayed over and over and over again because I did such an amazing job. No, I'm glad you guys were able to make it tonight. If you have any requests, be sure and message Wendy or put it into the group me if you have any requests or any questions. And like I said, I'm going to find out. I'm going to talk to National Life Group and find out at what point or why on that example, when we click the button for the option of the lifetime income benefit rider to drop the death benefit or don't drop the death benefit, there didn't seem to be a difference there. I always see a difference when it's a much smaller policy and smaller cash value. So maybe that has something to do with it. All right, great. Well, you guys have a blessed week. It's February 4th. We have so much time to run for the trip, and everybody goes to Rome. Everybody goes to Monaco. Everybody's going to go to Portugal. Use that CMC Rider, and that'll get you there. The easiest way to get to Rome is really, really understand the CMC Rider and the power of what we have here, especially in advanced markets, and just go out there and crush it. All right? Okay. I'm going to stop recording. Actually, I'll just stop. We'll just stop the meeting.